The final topic for this week is about the scope of variables. Let's define what a scope is. So when you declare a variable, there's a limited scope, like a range of places that you can actually use the variable. So the best way for me to illustrate will be by using examples. I'm going to illustrate the example on the paper. However, I will encourage you to really try. So this example also on the Eclipse as well. So the illustration context will be like a main method, but the same rule also applies to utility method as well. So just method, okay? Let's now just go over example one by one. I give you about 4 or 5 examples on the slides. I'm going to illustrate them one by one on the iPad over here. Okay, the first one over here. Basically, every time you want to determine the scope of a variable, always look for where the variable is declared. So now in this case over here, you can see let's focus on integer I over here. This is the only variable that's declared under the context of the main method. But if you actually got some utility method in some other class, like a public static integer get sum, for example, that's also similar. Okay, so now as soon as you see the declaration over here, the scope for this variable is going to cover everything within the method that's after this declaration. Basically, right? You can think about as soon as after you declare this variable I over here, the blue area are just a box. Inside this box over here, you can refer to I for as many times as you like. For example, you can see here I'm using I, that's valid. Here I'm using I, that's within the scope, that's also valid. You can see in either or both of the branches for the if statements, I can use I because this if statement is actually covered within the blue box over here. So I can use I over here. I can use I over here. I can also use I as a target for the assignment as well. And you can see outside the if statements, I can also use I over here, right? So all these are just valid. All of these. You can see once I box the scope for the variable, it will be quite easy for you to see. So that's what I would recommend if you are new to the scope idea. All right, that's the first example here. Everything's valid. What about the second one over here? So now for the second one, we actually got 3 variables. Let's now box their scopes one by one. I over here will still be the same as before, so its scope is going to be the entire main method, starting from its declaration. So this will be the scope for I. What about the scope for J? You can see J is actually declared over here inside this particular branch for if. So the scope is going to be just this particular branch, just that. Okay, which means outside the pink box, you cannot refer to this particular J. You cannot. All right. And also, so we got another variable over here. It's called J over here, the same name. However, this is okay because it will be considered the scope over here. You can see the pink and the orange boxes. They are different boxes. They do not really overlap. They're disjoint. So in different scope, you can maybe you just happen to declare the same variable name. That's okay. All right. So now let's take a look. So now you definitely can say once you declare I, can definitely refer to I. You can refer to I in the pink scope because pink is enclosed within the blue, and also you can refer to I in the orange because orange is enclosed within the blue. All right. So far so good. And then you can also refer to J, and notice that this J over here is really referring to the J over here, but not this J over here. Similarly, this J over here is really referring to the J over here in the same scope, right? All right, hopefully so far it's okay. So a common confusion could be, why can I actually declare J and J over here? So now you can see they simply belong to different scope, which is just the branches they belong to. So if you declare a variable from inside a particular branch or here, they simply belong to only that branch as its scope. All right, let's now see the next example. Let's see some illegal cases. Okay, again, let's now see this. I over here, as usual, let's box it. So this will be the scope for I over here. So what about other variables? You can see there's another variables over here. So now we got J. So J is declared within the if branch. So its scope will be just this if branch. And we got another variable here, K. So K is declared within the else. So that's why we can declare, we can box it within the branch over here. Let's see this. For I, you can definitely use over here. You can use over here. Over here, everywhere I'm using is within the blue box, right? And then what about J? You can see J is declared within the pink let me use pink, maybe that's better. So J is declared within the pink scope. So now using it within it will be okay. So now let's take a look. K was declared over here, and K definitely can be used within the orange scope. However, you can see now, if I actually got J over here, this is not good, right? Because within the orange scope over here, there is no variable that's called J. So the J you might be referring to is over here. The only one is here. But however, you cannot go outside the scope to refer to it. On the other hand, you might be confused a little bit. You can see over here, when I refer to J, I'm really referring to the J over here that's in the same scope. So you really want to compare this example and this example over here, right? Again, J over here can only be referring to the J that's within the orange scope. However, there's no such J declared so far. All right? So that's about this example here. Let's go for another one. Okay, one more. So now this one over here, again, we got I over here, and the scope will be the entire main method over here. And then we also got, let's say J, integer J, is declared within the if, so it's going to be covering the entire if. You can see we actually got nested if. That's okay, it's still within the if branch over here. All right, and also we got J over here, so that means it's going to cover the entire else branch over here. So now let's decide which are legal, which are not legal. I over here, it can be used anywhere that's within the blue box. So I here will be okay, I here will be okay, also I here, and also I here. They're all fine. All right. What about J? You can see the J within the pink. You can definitely use it over here. It's referring to the J over here. And also, if the J that's declared over here, you can also use it that's referring to it. Okay, that's so far so good. So now, if you use J over here, that's not good, right? So now, basically, what we are saying is, if you say the blue one, if you are using J over here, you can see the usage of this is outside the scopes of the pink and the orange. Is actually outside these two scopes, meaning that the only way to make this work is if you actually declare some variable called J over here. All right. Hopefully that's just like how we can declare I over here. However, if you try to declare some integer J over here, you will have some clashes, meaning that you have actually got J over here, also you got J over here in the subscope, also you got J over here in the subscope. It's not gonna work. You can try that, can play with it. I'm just giving you the principle. All right, so now finally, I already talked about many scenarios over here. Hopefully that already gave you the idea. So I would say if you're still beginning to really see the scope for variables, maybe try to draw on the paper, pretty much like how I did it. But once you get used to it, you will see how you can actually use the scope. I think the best way to really understand the scope will be to play with variable declaration and usage in Eclipse. That's something I would encourage you to do. All right. Otherwise, you can ask me in person or in the Q&A. I can do some more coding example together with you. All right. So now, final one I want to talk about. Let's now talk about using between different classes. This one I think that will be useful to know. Let's say we got some console application over here. Okay, console application, and then we got our scanner, we got our print line, etc. Okay. Let's say we got I, J, and K. So now I want to be very precise over here. So now I declare I over here, meaning that the scope for I will be basically the rest of the main method. Notice I'm being very careful over here because I simply just cannot use I over here. For example, let's say before this, if I simply insert a line over here to say I is assigned to 3, it wouldn't work because it's actually being used before I is actually declared. So that's why the scope has to be very carefully defined. Okay, and the next one will be, what about J? J is declared exactly over here, so the scope will be exactly like that. So this will be the scope for J. All right, and then finally you can see for K over here, the scope will just be until the end of the main method over here. Okay, like that. Okay, you can kind of see what I'm doing here. All right, let's now try to see this we are definitely trying to use, for example, we are trying to use I. I over here is being used in I over here, and J is being used over here. That's fine. It's still within the scope. You can see the usage I over here is within this blue box over here, and the J over here being used is within the green box over here. All right, and also the K we are trying to use over here. So that's within the pink box. You can see it's declared over here, and then we're still within the scope for K. So we're just using it. All right, so far so good. And I'll speak about return value in just a moment. But let's see in this one here as well in isolation, and then I'll connect them together. So now for this particular method here, it will be very similar. You can see now we declare integer result over here. So that means it will be from that point onwards until the end of this particular method, namely this getSum method over here, right? The same idea, the same principle. So now one more thing I would like to show you very quickly, right? You can see we are basically trying to call this particular method over here, utilities.getSum over here, and then we are passing I and J. We are passing basically I and also J over here. So the way to think about how this will be executed is, so when you call this with I and J, I'm calling this method over here. So that means I'm going to replace every occurrence of X just by I. Every occurrence of X just by I. All right. Similarly, I'm going to replace every occurrence of every occurrence of Y just by J. Every occurrence of Y just by J. Okay. And then I'm just going to actually do whatever computation that's necessary, right? And then trace the code. All right. One more thing I'd like to say is about the return value over here. You can see over here we actually got result over here. So result is actually being returned, right? And then this actually is a valid usage because that's within this particular scope. So this is okay. However, there's something very important to see. So here, when I say integer K is really assigned to this particular method call over here, you can think about, right, conceptually only, conceptually. What Java runtime would do is, you can see when we call this method over here, it's actually going to execute this block of code. And this block of code somehow is going to use I and J that's being passed as input. And then it's going to use them and then do something to the result. And now when we return the result over here, this result is already containing or storing the right value. For example, the addition between I and J. So you can think about conceptually, we are really doing integer K over here is assigned to result. You might be wondering, well, didn't you just say that if you want to refer to result, actually here, result is actually outside the scope of the blue over here. Outside the scope for the pink, for example, is outside the scope. I agree with you. That's why I said conceptually. Okay, you can think about it's almost like that. Okay, you can think about this is what Java. You can think about Java runtime is like a master. They can definitely do something which we cannot do, right? What Java runtime does. But you cannot write this. Okay, let me just make it clear again, and then we are done. Okay, so to really understand this particular method call over here, so somehow you're assigning the return value from this method call to the K over here. So I would say conceptually, right, doesn't mean you can write it. You just cannot write. If you simply replace this just by result, it's not going to work, right? So conceptually, it's something like this. Java runtime is actually going to say when you try to when you want to execute this method call, it somehow is going to store the result into the result over here, and then Java runtime is going to get a value of result and store that into K. So that's how they do it. All right. So this is just a little bit about clarifying how you can see the scope between classes. All right. So that's about this week, and then we still got some more topics to cover for the if statement, but we'll do that next week.